The plane touching down in Peru finally made me sigh in relief. The fear I had been keeping and hiding from my husband Mark would be kept at bay for the 3 months that we would be away on our honeymoon, come workation. I didn't want to tell him because, knowing who he was, he would have called off the wedding till the culprit was apprehended. And even now that we are married, I can't ruin the honeymoon by telling him. In a way, it would ruin everything, and hence, the culprit would win. I had been receiving death threats for over 6 months leading up to our wedding. I wasn't sure who it was, but I suspected Darcy, my husband's ex-girlfriend. She had been extremely clingy, and from the stories he told about her, she was definitely crazy as well. But that was only what I felt. The person had been stalking Mark and me. It was probably only me, since there were more pictures of me from when I was alone than pictures of Mark. I was terrified when I found the first envelope containing the pictures on my doorstep. The letters had issued such frightening threats, telling me to run away from Mark, that I had turned down all of Mark's date requests, coming up with excuses for why I couldn't go and why he couldn't come to visit me. But Mark had been adamant and did not give me a moment of rest. Eventually, he won me over, and I overcame my fear momentarily, and we started going out together again. I didn't receive any threats from the person for a month after getting back to going on dates, and I thought that they had probably just given up. Mark needed to go shopping at the mall one day, and since I was free, I decided to accompany him. After walking all over the mall, we decided to visit a cafe to get lunch. While I was eating, a notification popped into my phone. I checked and saw that an unknown number had sent me a video. I choked with what I was chewing on when I saw the video, and Mark had to rub my back. The video was a recording of me about 2 minutes ago while I was eating. The thought of the stalker being so nearby frightened me, and I lost all of my appetite for the food. "What's wrong, dear?" Mark asked when he saw me picking at my food. "Did something happen?" "I could see the look on your face when the message entered your phone," he said. Yeah, it was work," I said. "They changed my schedule, so now I'm getting more work and less time to finish it," I lied. "Well, that's not very nice. They know you're about to get married. How do they expect you to get ready?" he said. "I'll just have to find a way around it, like always," I said with a sigh. "You'll find a way, babe," Mark said. "Or we could just hire the planner like we agreed on," he added before taking a sip of his water. "I want things to be perfect, and I'm the only one who can guarantee that. Who knows you and I better than you and I told him. "No one," he said, smiling. I urged him to finish his food quickly so we could get out of there. I no longer felt safe outside. The threats continued, and I had to start taking precautions. I got pepper spray and a taser, and when Mark asked, I told him that my cousin got mugged, so I felt like I needed one. I started locking all doors and windows and only went out when necessary. But now that we were in Peru, I knew that we were going to be safe till it was time to go back home. I planned on letting Mark know on the last day so we could get the police involved the moment we touched down in New York. We rented an Airbnb really close to most of the tourist attractions so we could save money on transportation. It was a late flight, so we unpacked and went to bed. The next morning, we went for a little bit of sightseeing. Peru was very beautiful, and it helped us ease all of the stress I had been carrying since the threats started. 3 weeks into our honeymoon, and I had already forgotten about all the threats and the danger that I was in. One day after cycling through the city, we came back to take a shower. Mark was in and out in minutes, but I was more interested in a soak. He decided to go look for something we could do while I enjoyed my bath. He left as I turned on the water in the tub. I took off my clothes and wrapped a towel around myself and hummed as I went through our things, thinking of what to wear to whatever Mark found us to do. I told you to leave him alone, bitch. An angry voice called out from somewhere in the room. I screamed and jumped at the same time. Who's that? I asked as I got to my feet. I told you he was mine, but you wouldn't listen. The hostile voice said it again, coming from beneath the bed. Who's there? Tell me before I call the police, I called out, backing away from the bed. I could hear a person crawling out from under the bed. It was Darcy. I didn't know her voice. I had only seen pictures of her. What are you doing here? I asked her, my eyes darting back and forth looking for my phone. You took him away from me and fled to Peru. You thought I wouldn't find you? She asked. Darcy, you need to leave, I said to her, frightened. No, you need to leave my man alone. She said this through clenched teeth as she launched herself at me. We struggled and rolled on the floor. Darcy was strong for her size and soon had me by the hair. Let's go to the bath with hate, she said as she pulled me into the bathroom. I tried to resist, but she continued to pull me like a child. With little effort, she threw me into the bath where the milky white, sweet-smelling water sloshed everywhere. She pushed me below the water, and I struggled with my feet, splashing water everywhere and knocking the toiletries onto the floor. I managed to resist a little, and my head was above the water for a few seconds, which was enough to suck in before she pushed me under again. My lungs burned, and the water stung my eyes. I reached around the bathtub for something to use as a weapon. I found Mark's aftershave and silently thanked his stubbornness. I told him countless times that aftershave did not belong in the bathtub. I sprayed it continuously in the direction I thought Darcy's face was in and felt her hands go loose around my neck. I rose out of the water and jabbed her forehead with the bottle. As she fell backwards, she hit her head on the sink with a sound that echoed. Her eyes closed, and I thought she was dead. I called Mark, who ran back home. He checked her pulse and called the police. Darcy survived and was deported back to the U.S. for her sentence. We were both shocked and exhausted by what happened. Still, we decided to complete our time in Peru. We had to change accommodations, and I was fine with it. I enjoyed the rest of our honeymoon, and even when we went back home, I was happy. She was sentenced to 5 years for breaking and entering, attempted murder, stalking, and invasion of privacy when they found out that she had hacked both our phones.
We arrived at a nearby Airbnb in the early hours of a Sunday morning. It was absolutely sub-zero temperatures, and as we stepped out of the car, stumbling ever so gently as we touched the ground and stood up, the temperature seemed utterly irrelevant as we looked on towards the building that was the Airbnb. It was an estranged place, so far out in the desert, where a few cars often drove past on the way back from Las Vegas. We ourselves only came this way after partying all Friday and Saturday in some of the finest clubs Las Vegas had to offer. We had lost a great deal of money, so me and my wife decided to go with somewhere cheap to stay on our return home. I locked the car, hearing the bleeping noise to make sure it was all secure, and we made our way over to the sign that read, "Reception," which we assumed meant reception, but the mold had gotten at it and the sea had dropped off, lying on the ground below. The door swung open as we walked inside, rather erratically to our surprise, and allowed us to see that absolutely nobody was even here. It was only 4:30 a.m. The goddamn staff should be up and awake, not slacking off, making us wait for even longer in the icy cold waiting area. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out. And after a few moments, an eerie reply came back. "Just coming." It sounded partially infuriated, but something told us that sound of a voice, filled by such a raspy volume of tone, was little more than ominous indication of the place we were about to book. After a couple minutes, a shadowy figure walked out behind the desk, just returning from what appeared to be the back area, but his hands were hidden in his pockets, and he glared strongly into our eyes, not with fury, but with perhaps a hint of bewilderment.
How can I help you?
His disjointed speech was verging on inaudible, but my wife Clarissa just about made out what he had said. We would like one room for one night, please.
That would be $4, please.
Both our faces lit up with a feeling of shock at such a low price for the size of the Airbnb. It was about 4 stories high. It was absolutely a bargain for just a $4 fee. We paid up the measly sum, and the man gave us a set of keys. Seemingly just out of his pocket, they stunk of a rancid, rotting stench that made us wince. But at that point, we were far too tired to care. And so we made our way up to what the key said was room 20, floor 4. The elevator ride up felt nerve-wracking, like we were heading towards something evil? It didn't feel right whatsoever, and I looked to Clarissa to check she was okay, but I could see her trying to hold back her trembles. It's fine, hun. It'll only be a quick sleep, and we'll be back on the road in no time. I patted her on the arm for comfort, but she simply couldn't stop shaking. I don't like that man, Ryan. He freaks me out. And I didn't see a single car outside either. I don't want to be the only ones here. The fear in her voice seemed to echo in my thoughts. The man did appear extremely sluggish, but not in a fatigued manner. It was rather like he wanted to go slow, to savor the interaction of actual guests, perhaps. I gave Clarissa a hug as we finally got to level 4 and made our way down to room 20. The hallway was far less lit up than at reception. It gave off an eerie aura that we couldn't seem to shake. It was almost like it followed us. Closely behind, too. In fact, it was so poorly lit that we had to use our phone's flashlight just to find our room. The door of our room was rotten. The wood was literally falling off in large waterlogged chunks, and the floor below was drenched and wet. We twisted the key around the lock and rotated the handle. The thing practically just stayed on as we pushed our way through, feeling the squelch of the floor below on our feet. Inside was just the bare necessities: a bed, a small table and chair, a tiny lamp in the corner that was emitting just enough light to see the bed and the table and chair, as well as a toilet and sink in a separate room. I turned my flash off and we both stumbled our way over to the bed. Jumping into the bed, we felt the bearings underneath snap and fracture. But we didn't care as we swiftly drifted off into slumber.
Ryan, wake up! Ryan, that freak of a man is at the end of our bed taking pictures! Ryan, get up, you idiot!
I sprang up as I heard the shriek of Clarissa bellowing down my ear canal. The man at reception was just standing there, camera out in the corner of the room, staring at us both with a wide grin, drool dripping from his mouth, his eyes bulging open. "Get the fuck out, you freak!" I screeched at him. He continued to stand absolutely motionless, his grin only widening. Since verbal communication didn't work, I decided to stand up, sprint over to him, and deliver one fist that I planted into his camera. It flew across and smashed through the window leading onto the balcony outside. The second it had hit the window, the man bolted out the door, and we heard his footsteps barreling down the corridor. He was going for the camera. I snatched my phone from out of the bed and took to the balcony, ready to record the freak, whilst Clarissa dialed for the police. Minutes ticked past, until finally he shot out from down below. His camera had shattered all across the floor as he leapt towards it, probably trying to recover any scraps of what he must have been filming of us. I shouted down towards him, making him look up, directly into my camera that was recording. Now, with his face on video, we waited for the police as the man finished gathering all the scraps of his camera and dashed off to a car that he jumped in and sped off in down the road. The police asked us for the video immediately, and I got the number plate of the car down too. They called into the station asking for a dispatch unit to chase down the guy in the car. But what was by far the most chilling of it all was what the officers told us after watching the video, which they immediately recognized by his face. He was a man called Max Harris. This man, they said, had been breaking into shoddy motels all across the state, acting as a receptionist, giving late-night customers keys to rooms that were still in repair, then sneaking in through unlocked doors or poorly built windows. The guy supposedly used to wait all night for the people to wake up, then captured their expressions on the camera, just for some of his weird, self-made entertainment. We got in our car later that day, shaken and terrified, and we drove back quietly to our home.
We all heard about these bullies. They're just kids that don't know any better, and because they have some internal problems of their own, the only way for them to feel better is to pick on the ones they call weak. I know the theory, but I just want to say that I'm not really for this entire theory. You see, I only met one bully in my entire life, and it wasn't your typical one. The one you see in movies, a slightly bigger boy with a lot of friends behind him, who is captain of the football team or something. No, not at all. This bully, which left a metaphorical mark on me and also a physical one, took the form of a girl. Let me take you back to the beginning. We were all getting along really well. I had already started to become one of the most popular kids. I was invited to parties and I had a really cool group of friends. But in my classroom, there was this girl. Her name was Matilda. She was really sweet and shy. We would say hi to each other in the hallways and even eat lunch together sometimes. She wasn't a weirdo or anything, not that I knew of, but she kept mostly to herself. Matilda had this image of being a perfect person. She would always help anyone at any time, no questions asked. But there was one side of her that no one knew, no one but me. She was a real bully. She would bully me when no one was around, but when we were in the presence of other people, she would act all shy and innocent. Yeah, and the bad part was that no one believed me. One day, after Matilda called me different names, I went to one of my friends and told her all about it. She called me an asshole, and she even said that she'll use one of her knives at home to carve the word on my forehead. I told Alice, my friend. Are you kidding me? Matilda? Come on, I know we have a lot of boring classes today. I was as bored as you are, but don't go making up stuff like that about her. She's the most caring person I know. Alice responded. One day, I was in the bathroom at school, and I thought I was alone. But boy, was I wrong. I was looking in the mirror when... You think you're so pretty and everyone likes you, huh? I heard. As I turned around, it was Matilda. She popped out of nowhere. What? I asked before she grabbed my hair, pulled hard on it, and then slapped me across the face. I'm getting sick of people like you, she told me after she assaulted me. I didn't know how to react. This went on for months, but nobody would believe me. She was really nice to other people, but whenever she would see me alone, she would hurt me, either physically or mentally. One time at lunch, I went to get some food and there she was behind me. Don't act so high and mighty all the time, she said while I was holding my tray. Out of nowhere, she punched me in the back, being careful so that no one would see her. She hit me so hard that I dropped my tray on the floor. Right at that moment, the lunch lady came and greeted her. Thank you for volunteering at last week's fundraiser, Matilda. We couldn't have done it without you, the lunch lady said while Matilda acted shy and smiled. Everyone saw her as this perfect and helpful girl who always did good deeds, but I knew that she was evil, and she had something against me. She even whispered that she will kill me one day as she walked past me in the hallway, right before she greeted other students with a shy smile. As I was going home one night, she popped right behind me. "Listen, I'm sorry I acted this way," she said, and invited me to her house for some popcorn and a movie. "Come on, we'll watch Mean Girls or something. It would be fun. I'll make you my special popcorn. It's the least that I can do," she told me. "But why did you bully me for so long?" I asked her, keeping my distance. "I was jealous, I guess. I have never been so popular. I mean, people like me because I help them with stuff, but with you, it's different. They like you even if you don't do anything for them," she told me. I agreed to bury the hatchet and went to her house. Her parents were away that day. I walked in and took a seat on the couch. She said she was going to get the popcorn. Before I knew it, she taped my mouth so that I couldn't scream. Then she tied my hands and I was completely helpless. "It's time to carve you with a knife," she said before going to the kitchen to get it. I managed to free my feet and ran towards the door, but she saw me and jumped on my back. I started to fight her, but she was really strong for how frail she looked. I punched her in the face, and that made her really mad. She punched me back, almost leaving me unconscious. She grabbed me by my hair and threw me on the other side of the room. She took the knife and got on top of me, pressing the blade to my forehead. I screamed, but no one heard me. She started to trace some lines. Luckily, the doorbell rang several times. Before going to see who it was, she tied me again. "Hello?" she asked. It was one of the neighbors who heard screaming. "Is everything okay?" the neighbor asked. Matilda fidgeted. She tried to block his view as he tried to look around the house. "Yeah, everything is fine. I'm with a friend from school. We're watching a movie. Maybe that's what you heard. It's pretty scary," Matilda told him while laughing nervously. The man said, "Okay then, have fun." When I heard that, I got desperate. I knew that he was my only chance to get out of there alive. So using all the energy I had in my body, I managed to rip through the material with my teeth, and then I screamed as loud as my lungs would let me. The neighbor saw me and came inside before calling the police. The girl ran away, but that evening she was caught. This made the news. This is a small town after all. No one would even believe that she would do such things. Matilda was sent to juvie, and I never heard from her again. When I got to school, after a couple of days, Alice came to me and gave me a hug. "I guess you can't know a person at all these days," she told me, feeling sorry for not believing me.